We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin Amud Beis Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zara Daf 7b. On the previous Amud, the Brisa was discussing when it comes to Gazlonim and Amei Haaretz, if they do Teshuvah, can we then rely on them once again and consider them to be Chaverim? And we are in the middle of the second version of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, on the issue of whether they can do Teshuvah or not, it's dependent on how they did the Aveira. If they did the Aveira in private, then they can do Teshuvah. But if they did it publicly, Ein Mekablan Osan, then we do not accept them. We don't allow them to do Teshuvah to be considered Chaverim. And Rashi explains, Befarhesia Hoel Upakr Kol Kach, since again they did it so much that they did it Befarhesia in public, in such a way that they so much did not care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so Shuvei Nosen Lehen Losha B'Teshuvah Shlema, so then we don't let them do that full Teshuvah. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omrim, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, they say, Bein Kach Uvein Kach, it doesn't matter how the Aveira was done, Mekablin, we do accept them, essentially we always accept the Teshuvah. Shenemar, as it says, Shuvu Banim Shovim, it says you're allowed to return. And Rashi explains, Shovaviv Mashma Mizidim Ufarhesia, it doesn't matter if they did it on purpose, doesn't matter if they did it in public. In all of those situations, they will be able to do Teshuvah. And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Ish Kfar Ako, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yitzchak Ish Kfar Ako says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Hilchasa Ka'oso Hazug, the halach is like that pair of Tanoim, meaning the halach is like Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. And again, the reason we're bringing this is because we're bringing a series of situations where Amoroim Paskin, like Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Rabbi Yishmael says, Shlosha lifneim ushlosha la'achareim aser. This is a continuation from the first Mishnah. Rabbi Yishmael is being more strict than the first Mishnah. The first Mishnah had said that 3 days before the holidays of the Ovid Kochavim, you're not allowed to do business with them, etc., because you're not allowed to do things where they're going to go and they're going to thank their Avoda Zara. And Rabbi Yishmael says the halach is not only 3 days before their holiday, but even 3 days after. That's what it means to say 3 days before and 3 days after, it is aser. The Chachamim say, Lifnei Eidayan aser. Before their holiday, it's aser. Liachar Eidayan, but after their holiday, mutter, it is going to be mutter. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi, Amar Shmuel, Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi says that Shmuel says, Yom Aleph, those who celebrate Sunday as a holiday. Again, we saw earlier that some say that the proper girsa should be the Notzrim, that it refers to the Christians. In any case, whatever refers to those who worship on Sunday. So says Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi from Shmuel, Ledivri Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi Shmuel, who says 3 days before and 3 days after, it's also to do business with the non-Jews from the 3 days before and 3 days after their holiday. So now 3 days before and 3 days after Sunday, and essentially is the whole week. So Liola Maser, so it's going to always be Aser to do business with them. This we quoted earlier. Rashi explains, Liola Maser Shlosha Lefanav Shlosha Liacharav Hu Atzmo. You've got 3 days before, you've got 3 days after, and then Sunday itself. Kilomar Kol Shavas Yimei Shabbos. It comes out all the days of the week. It's going to be forbidden. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, the Chachamim say, Lifnei Eidei and Aser. Before their holiday, it's Aser. Le'achar Eidei and Mutter. But after their holiday, it's going to be Mutter. And the Gemara asks, Chachamim Hainu Tanakama. Isn't the Chachamim the same exact as the Tanakama in the first Mishnah? That's exactly what the first Mishnah said. It said that before the holiday is Aser, after the holiday, it's Mutter. And the Gemara continues and answers, Hein below Eidei and Ika Beinayu. The difference is, are we counting them, meaning the 3 days before, and not counting the holiday? Meaning, is it 3 days before or is it 2 days before? Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama holds, the first Mishnah holds, Hein below Eidei, and the 3 days is not counting the holiday, so it really means 3 days before the holiday, and this we said earlier. For Rabbanan Basroi Sabri, but the later Rabbanan, that's the Chachamim in our Mishnah right over here, they say Hein V'Eidei, and the 3 days includes the holiday, and so really if it's a 1 day holiday, it would just be 2 days before. And Rashi explains, Tanakama Savar Hein below Eidei, and Kedadaikina La'el, this we said earlier, the Katani Lefnei Eidei and Shel Ovdei Kochavim Shlosha Yamim. The phrasing was before the holiday, 3 days. Shma Mina Shlosha Lefneim Levad Ho'ed Ka'amar. So you see that it's 3 days before the holiday, not counting the holiday. V'Rabbanan Basroi, and then the latter Rabbanan, that's the Chacham of this Mishnah, to Lo Yahavu Simona, they don't give a simon, they don't give an exact sign. They simply say Lifnei is Aser, La'achar is Mutter. So Ikol Meimar, so we can say Hol V'Lo Eshkechan Midi Beinei, and if we don't find anything between them, Ikol Meimar B'Ha'asul Fluge, we could say that's what they're arguing about. To Hein V'Eidei and Gimel Kamer, that's what they're saying. Again, they're saying that the 3 days includes the holiday. That's the first answer of the Gemara in terms of what the Chacham are saying. That's different than the Tanakama. And the Gemara continues, Ibay same if you want, I could say another answer. Nasa v'nasan ika beinayu. What happens if business was done? This was an issue addressed earlier as well. Do we then say that whatever was gotten from that business is prohibited to get hana from? Tanakama savar, the Tanakama holds nasa v'nasan mutter. If business was done, so after the fact, we say mutter. For Rabbanan Basroi Savri, and the latter Rabbanan, the Chacham of this Mishnah, they say nasa v'nasa nasr, that if business was done, then even after the fact it's going to be prohibited. And Rashi explains Rabbanan Basroi Savri nasa v'nasa nasr stama ka'amrina, because they just say it in a blanket way. V'lo katani asr loses v'loses ketanakama. They don't phrase it that it's forbidden to do business in the way that Tanakama phrases it. The mashma lechatchila hu delo hadiyavet shaper dami. The way that Tanakama phrases it, it sounds like it's a problem lechatchila. You shouldn't do it in the first place, but after the fact, it's going to be mutter again according to the Tanakama, and that's what the Rabbanan Basroi disagree with. And the Gemara continues with a third answer. V'iboisem, if you want, I could say the Shmuel ika beinayu. The difference between the Tanakama and the Chacham in this Mishnah is what Shmuel said. The Yomar Shmuel, because Shmuel said Bagola, in the exile, ein aser ela yom edom. The only thing that's aser is the day of the holiday. Tanakama islay the Shmuel. The Tanakama holds of what Shmuel said. Rabbanan Basroi less lahu the Shmuel. The Rabbanan, the latter Rabbanan, the Chacham in this Mishnah, they do not hold of Shmuel. And Rashi explains Bagola in the exile, ein ha'ovdei kochavim aduken kol kach ba'avodas kochavim. In the exile, the ovdei kochavim, the idol worshippers, are not so, they don't cling so much to their Avoda Zara. Kedamin ovdei kochavim shebechutz la'aretz lav ovdei avodas kochavim ninu, like we say, the ovdei kochavim in chutz la'aretz, they're not really ovdei avodas kochavim. V'yod, and furthermore, says Rashi, demistafinon minai, we're also afraid of them, and so that's why, again, when it comes to the goal, it's only going to be us on the holiday itself. But the Rabbanan Basroi less lahu the Shmuel. The Rabbanan Basroi, they don't hold of Shmuel. To kaven delo mesayim behedya b'mai pligi. Again, Rashi says similar to before, since it's not clear exactly what they're arguing about. You could say that they're coming to add something on that the Tanakama didn't hold of. They heard that the Tanakama said again before the holiday it's also to do business. And it makes sense to say that the Tanakama was only saying it when the Ovdei Kochavim are not so, they don't have so much authority and power over Klal Yisrael. And they're coming to say that it's always usher before the holiday, even in that situation. And Rashi notes, you can't answer the reverse. Maybe you'll say it's actually the Tanakama who's more strict. You can't say that the Tatar Shaper, it's not going to be a good answer then. The Stam Tana Basrola Tefuyasu, because in general, when a later Tana comes along, he's coming to add something on. And the Gemara continues and gives a final answer to the question. Same, if you want, I could say, the Nachem Hamadai Ika Beinayu. The difference between them is the statement or the halacha of Nachem Hamadai, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa. Nachem Hamadi Omer. Nachem Hamadi says, Eino Asra Yom Echad Lefnei Edain. It's only prohibited one day before the holiday. Tanakama less late than Nachem Hamadi. The Tanakama does not hold of Nachem Hamadi. They hold again 3 days. For Rabbanan Basroi Islu the Nachem Hamadi. The Rabbanan Basroi, the Chacham in our Mishnah don't make it clear how many days they hold of Nachem Hamadi. That is just one day. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to what we said above. Nachem Hamadi Omer, Nachem Hamadi says, Eino Asra Yom Echad Lefnei Edain. It's only usher to do business with the Ovid Kochavim one day before their holiday. Amru Lo, they said to him, Nishtaka Hadavar V'lo Nemar, let that be forgotten, and it should not be said. Rashi explains, Nishtaka Hadavar Lo Yotza Davar Zemi Pi Adam Liolam. This never left the mouth of anyone. Lishnachrin, another way to understand, Lo Yotza Davar Zelachutz, this shouldn't go out, it shouldn't spread this teaching. In any case, the point over here is that the Chachamim disagree with Nachem Hamadi, and they say Nishtaka Davar V'lo Nemar, such a thing should not be stated. The Gemara says, V'ika Rabbanan Basroi, the Kaimi Kivasi, but what about the Rabbanan in our Mishnah, the latter Rabbanan? And again, we just said that they're following Nachem Hamadi, so what do you mean to say that it shouldn't be stated? And the Gemara says, no, Man Chachamim Nachem Hamadi, who is the Chacham in our Mishnah? It actually is Nachem Hamadi, that's who it is, and so therefore he's the only one that says it, and again, the Chachamim say Nishtaka Davar V'lo Nemar. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Yidach, we learned in another Brisa, Nachem Hamadi Omer, Nachem Hamadi says, Mochrin Lahen, one can sell to the non-Jews, Sus Zachar V'zaken, a horse which is male and old, B'melchama, during wartime. Rashi explains, Mochrin Lahen Sus Zachar Zaken, B'socha Melchama, again during the war, She'eno Ela L'kalkel, it's really not to the benefit of the Ovid Kochavim, Umilsa de lo Shchichu, and this is something that's uncommon, and that's why it's allowed. V'lo asi l'meiluf mina, so no one's going to learn from there, Limchor Behema Achrisi, to sell some other animal to the Ovid Kochavim, which that actually is prohibited. Tahadi Amri Rabbanan, and the point over here is that which the Rabbanan said, Ein Mochrin Lahen Behema Gasu, you're not allowed to sell to the non-Jews large animals. Lo asru ela mishum she'elo schiris, the only reason it's asur to sell Behema Gasu to the non-Jews is because we're afraid you're going to then lend or rent it to them, and then they're going to use it on Shabbos. This is going to be talked about later on in the Perek. But over here, b'milsa de lo shchicha, to sell them a sus zachar zaken during a war is a milsa de lo shchicha, it's not common, so lo gazer Rabbanan. So the Rabbanan did not make such such a gezerah. Again, that's what Nachum Hamadi says, and again the response is Amrulo, the Chachamim, they said to him, Nishtaka hadavar v'lo nemar, such a thing should be forgotten and not stated. The Gemara says, Vayika ben Beseira dekoi kevase, but isn't there ben Beseira? He follows Nachum Hamadi. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, ben Beseira Omer, ben Beseira matir besus, that ben Beseira says it's okay by a horse. Rashi explains, ben Beseira matir besus, levisha malachto lirchov adam olav. It's a different reason. The reason why ben Beseira says a horse is okay is because the general malacha with a horse is to ride on the horse. Ve'in b'malacha zuchi of chatas. This kind of malacha, if done on Shabbos, is not a doraisa. It's not chayiv chatas, shahachai no seis atzmo, because a living person really is considered to be carrying himself. The Tanan b'meshilin peiros, we learn Meseches Beya, Elohein mishum shavus lo rochvan al gavi behema. This is one of the shavus. It's one of the derabbanans not to ride upon an animal. But in any case, you see that ben Beseira also is matir besus. Says the same thing as Nachum Hamadi. But the Gemara says it's not exactly the same. Ben Beseira lo kamaflik ben zecharim lenekevos. Ben Beseira doesn't make a distinction between males and females. But he, meaning Nachum Hamadi, mida kamaflik ben zecharim lenekevos, from the fact that he makes that distinction between males and females, you see that in general, K'Rabbanan Svirle, in general, he holds like the Rabbanan, Ula Rabbanan, and according to the Rabbanan, Nishtakei Hadavar V'lo Nemar. Again, such a thing should be forgotten and not stated. That halacha is not correct. And Rashi explains, Lo Kamaflik Ben Zachar L'Nekeva. Again, he doesn't make that distinction. This Ben Beseira doesn't make the distinction between male and female, Ben Zakin L'Bachar, whether it's old or young, Iyu Midu Kamaflik V'Oser B'Bachar. But from the fact that he is saying that he's making such a distinction, if it would be a younger horse, it would be Oser. So K'Rabbanan Svirle. So you see that he does hold fundamentally like the Rabbanan. Diasr Mishum Toras Klei Zayin Dekatel B'Sichufe Kedel, because they do say there's a prohibition also because they can be used as weapons, they can be used in times of war in that fashion. He agrees with the Rabbanan in that regard, and that's why again he only says it's okay by the Zocher Zaken. And so again, since he follows the Chachamim, so within that Shita, again, we do not hold like Ben Beseira. That's what the Chachamim say. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Bryce, so Nachum Hamadi Omer, Nachum Hamadi says, Hasheves, the dill plant, Misaser, Zera, V'yerek, V'zir, and you have to take off Meiser, whether it's used as a seed, as a vegetable, or as a pod. Amrulo, they said to him, Nishtaka Adavar V'lo Nemer, again, such a thing, it should not be stated, it is not the halacha. The Gemara says, V'yikar Rabbi Eliezer, Dekoi Kavasi, but what do you mean? Again, Rabbi Eliezer, he follows Nachum Hamadi. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Hasheves, the dill plant, Misaser, Zera, V'yerek, V'zir, and doesn't matter if it's used as seed or vegetable or pods, again it's misaseres, you're going to take off meiser. And the Gemara says to that, Hasam b'daganu nisa, there we're talking about the garden variety, and Rashi explains, misaser zera v'yerek v'zir, and again you're going to take off meiser in all these different forms, bein shalaktu kishu yerek, whether it was collected when it was a vegetable, bein shalaktu kishu zirin, whether it was harvested when it was zirin, again when it was a pod, shahinichu ad shetsamchu garine zaro b'sochu v'hukshu, that's when again the seeds are within it and it hardens, v'chivtan tzarech la'aser as hazera midrabbanan. You're going to need to take off meiser at the rabbanan level. And it's a way to eat it in all of these fashions. Hilkach kulu havalu gemar piri. All of these fashions are considered to be the final product of the fruit. Bedagnu nisa, and then we said the garden variety hagadol begina, if it grows in the garden, deroy lechol zera v'yerek v'zir, and those are actually able to be eaten in all those forms. Aval hagadol besados, but those who grow in the fields, eino nechol yerek, they're not eaten as yerek elazera kein chardol, they're eaten as seeds. Ke'ein chardol, they're eaten in the same way that mustard seed is eaten. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Rav Acha bar Menyume li Abaya. Rav Acha bar Menyume said to Abaya, Gavro Rabo Asa Me'asra, there was a great person who came from our land, he came from Madai, referring again to Nachum HaMadai, called Milsa D'Amar, and everything that he says, Amri Le, they say to him, Nishtaka Adav Lo Nemar, that should be forgotten and never stated. They're not paskening anything like him. Amar, so he said, Ika Chada Dav Dinan Kavase. There is one thing that he said that we do follow him. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Nachum HaMadi, Omer Nachum HaMadi says, Shoel Adam Tzaracha B'Shomea Tefillah. A person should make his requests, any requests that he has in Shomea Tefillah of davening. And the Gemara says, Amar, he said, Bar Minot Dahi, there's an exception, don't count that. The Talia B'Ashlei Ravravi, because that, there's Ashlei Ravravi, there's great trees, or some people say there are thick ropes. The idea is there are great Rabbanan, great Chachamim, who say like that. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brayser, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Shoel Adam Tzrachav, that first a person should ask for his needs, V'yachar kach yispalel, and then he should daven, Shenemar, as it says, Tfilo lo'ani kiyatov, it says Tfilo lo'ani refers to the poor, the person in distress, the person's needs, and then it says, V'lifnei Hashem yishpoch sicho, and then it says, in front of Hashem he should yishpoch sicho, which means davening, as we say, Ein sicho sicha ela tefillah. Sicha, the conversation referred to over here, is tefillah, is prayer. Shenemar, as it says, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach ba'asada. When it says Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach ba'asada, that is referring to tefillah. And Rashi explains, B'shomei Tefillah, again, Nachum Hamadi says that a person should make all of his requests in Shomei Tefillah, Marich Bo, he should lengthen that Tefillah. V'shol Tzrach, if he can lengthen that bracha and ask for whatever he needs. B'ashlei Rav V'chavolim Avim V'chazakim, it could mean thick, strong ropes. B'yesh Omer B'lonos Gedolos, some say it means large trees. Kilomer, what it means to say is, Halav Kivosei Otan Avdin. It's not that we're really following Nachum Hamadi over here, because Pluksa de Rabbanan Namihi, because also the Rabbanan say that, Kedekatoni L'kamon V'chachamim Omrim. We're going to see on Daf Ches Amud Aleph that the Chachamim say exactly like Nachum Hamadi, and so therefore you can't really count that we follow Nachum Hamadi. In any case, over here we're in the first opinion of the Brisa, and Rabbi Eliezer says first a person is Shoel Adam Tzrachav, he asks for his needs, and Achar Kach Yispalel, and on that Rashi says V'achar Kach Yispalel means Yurches, that means the Shmona Esrei, Ki Yatov, we bring the pasuk Atifas Nafsho V'daigas Libo Yispalel Tchila. First he should say the worries that are on his mind, that's Tfilo Lioni Ki Yatov V'hodr Lefnei Hashem Yishboch Sicho, and then Yishboch Sicho, which is Shmona Esrei, which refers to Shmona Esrei. And Lasuach Basada, again, when it came to Yitzchak, it says Lasuach Basada Tfilas HaMincha, Tikein, that refers to the fact that he instituted Tfilas HaMincha, the Perek Tfilas HaShachar, and Perek Tfilas HaShachar in Meseches Bracha. So in any case, again, we see according to Rabbi Eliezer that first a person is Shoel Tzrachav, and then he does Tefillah, then he does what we call the Shmona Esrei. Rabbi Yoshua says the other way around. Yispalel, first he should daven, and V'achar Kach Yishal Tzrachav, then he should ask for his needs. Shenemar, as it says, Eshboch Lefanav Sichi, that's going to refer to the davening, and so Rasi Lefanav Agid, then I say my tzaros, I say all of my afflictions, that refers to Tzarachav. The Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer Nam Yaksiv Eshboch Lefanav Sichi, but Rabbi Eliezer also, what does he do with this pasuk of Eshboch Lefanav Sichi? So he says you can read that the other direction, Hachi Kamar, this is how you read it. Eshboch Lefanav Sichi, I'm going to daven, Bizman Shetzarasi Lefanav Agid, if beforehand I said my tzaros, I said my afflictions. Rabbi Yoshua Nami Haksiv Tfilo Lioni Kiyato, from Rabbi Yoshua also, what does he do with the pasuk of Tfilo Lioni Kiyato? That sounds like first he's asking for his needs. And again, we can reverse the understanding. Hachi Kamar, this is what the pasuk means. Eimasai Tfilo, when is Tfilo Lioni? Bizman Shelefnei Hashem Yishboch Sicho. That's talking in a situation where first there was Lefnei Hashem Yishboch Sicho. First there was Tfilo, and then the person asks for his needs. And the Gemara says, Michli, let us see. Kroi lo kamar daiki, v'lo kamar daiki. Really, the psukim, they don't go like either one. You can always read the pasuk in the other direction. And so, so what really are they arguing about? They're arguing about the following. Kedadarish Rabbi Simloi, it's like Rabbi Simloi darshaned. The Darish Rabbi Simloi, because Rabbi Simloi darshaned, Liholam Yesadir Adam Shivcha Shel Makom. A person should first say the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'achar Kach Yispalel, and then he should daven. And Rashi explains, Yesadir Adam Shivcha Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's Shalosh Brachos Rishonos, that's the first three brachos of Shmona Esrei, Avos, Gevuros, Kedushas Hashem, that's Avos and Gevuros and Kedushas Hashem, She'ein Bohen Tefillah, those really don't have Tefillah, Ela Shevach, they really have praise. V'achar Kach B'shar Brachos, and then after the rest of the brachos, Yesh Divrei Tchino Tefillah, there are requests, and that's what we call Tefillah, and so that's what Rabbi Simloi is saying in terms of how it's organized. First is the Shevach Shel Makom, and then Tefillah. And the Gemara continues, Manolan, from where do we know that? Moshe Rabbeinu, we know that from Moshe Rabbeinu. Techsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, Hashem Elokim Atoach Ilosa Laharos as Avdecha V'Gomer. First Moshe says all of the goodness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave. Ochsib Basrei, and then it says after that, Ebrona ve'eres Aretz Hatova, let me cross and see the great land, to see Eretz Canaan, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ches Amud Aleph.